Thank you all for being here, and thanks for joining us. When we first started Monument Creatives 5 years ago, we couldn't have imagined having a room full of this many amazing, talented women. So being able to celebrate International Women's Day today with you means the world to us, and we're grateful to have each and every one of you here. I'm Rachel McFadden.
And I'm Hazel Geary, and we are the co-founders of Monument Women's Creative Alliance. We also happen to be business partners and close friends as well. Together we run Drio, where we do website development and online marketing strategies. And that's actually how we started Monument Women's Creative Alliance. We had been in business for a few years, and as creatives ourselves, we wish we had a community that was made just for us. We've always been inspired by seeing so many women pave their own path and by the impact they're making in their local community. We had this dream of bringing female creatives in Baltimore together to exchange ideas, collaborate, and to connect. Looking around this room, I'd say we had succeeded. Today, Monument Women's Creative Alliance is 350 plus in membership, and we're just getting started. Tonight is just as much about celebrating each other's achievements as it is about taking action.
Our panel discussion is all about leveraging your sphere of influence to forge a fair and equal world, and we're honored to be joined by a powerhouse panel of women who are doing just that. Our panelists are Brooke Lierman, who's Maryland's first female comptroller, Dana Ledyard, COO of CodePath, and Tiffanni Reidy, a multi-hyphenate creative from Reidy Creative. And our discussion will be moderated by our longtime friend and award-winning journalist, Marianne Banister. We have no doubt that this discussion will be eye-opening, inspiring, and actionable.
We also want to thank our incredible sponsors. So as I call your name, if you're in the room, if you could just do a quick wave. Okay, we'll start with United Way of Central Maryland. Woo! Shamelessly Drio. Woo! Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association. Woo! Fearless. Woo! Spark Baltimore. Where are you? Woo! The Scout Guide. Woo! The Startup at Towson University and the Athena PowerLink Baltimore. Hello. Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation. Woo. Rosedale Federal. Woo. And MCAA Women in the Mechanical Industry. I see you. Hello. By being here tonight, you're also giving back to your community. A portion of today's ticket proceeds will go to the Marianne House. Marianne House, can you say hello? Woo! Marianne House is a healing community for women and their children in Baltimore who are in need of housing and support services. As moms, this cause is especially dear to us. Thank you both for being here. After the panel, we'll have some opportunities for you to expand your own sphere of influence by creating connections with the brilliant women in this audience. I don't think Rachel and I could have imagined when we first connected 15 years ago that it would lead to this very moment. My point being that you never know what ripple effects a single connection can have on your own life and career and your community and the world. So thank you all for being here. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce our moderator, Marianne Banister. She's talking, so we'll get her attention. As an award-winning journalist, Marianne Banister has seen a lot and experienced many of her own challenges as a professional woman. She spent 30 years covering news and newsmakers nationwide. You may remember Marianne as the 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. anchor at WBAL-TV, News for 16 years. So everyone give it up for Marianne. And for the last 11 years, she has shared her unique experience with clients in the corporate world through Banister Media, LLC, where she offers personalized executive training and presentation skills and crisis communication. And additionally, Marianne is the co-founder and CEO of the Claire Marie Foundation, a nonprofit which she established along with her husband in memory of their daughter, Claire Wagenhurst, who passed away from melanoma in 2014. We'd like to welcome Marianne Banister.
Thank you. Ooh, now it's up. Thank you, guys. Welcome to everybody. Isn't this great? How many of you have been at one of these other events before? Let's see a hand. That means we have a lot of new people tonight then. Absolutely. This is great. An International Women's Day celebrating us. Thanks to the guys to show up and to celebrate us as well. We appreciate it. We know you know where the real power in the room is, right? Yeah. But we have such wonderful speakers tonight with you. We're going to have a wonderful conversation. Then we're going to come out and we want your questions and your thoughts following up to what we're talking about. So we have a few questions. We're getting it started. But as I told our guests, our panelists, it's like, you take it whatever direction you want to go. So y'all have something to drink and to eat and you're good, right? We're all situated? Okay. Well, let's introduce our first guest here. Tiffanni Reidy is what you might call a multi-hyphenated creative. She also believes to build a true community, we must support small businesses. I think that's something that we all really appreciate. She's a Baltimore native. She has a master's in interior architecture. Her work with Reidy Creative encompasses interior architecture, creative direction, graphic design, photography, and publication design. Do you sleep? Just a little bit of a Renaissance person, I guess. For commercial clients as well as residential, Tiffanni brings modern, a little flair of vintage and unique to her clients, always remembering to honor the historic nature, which is what makes Baltimore so special. She loves to collaborate with local artisans and just to reach out, connect, and to bring that special touch to her clients and also to connect on behalf of the community. She's a wife, a mom, an entrepreneur, and she's created her own path to success. I think we're gonna have some wonderful conversations and thoughts from her tonight. Tiffanni, welcome. Our next panelist tonight, Dana Ledyard. Did I say it right? Ledyard. Yes. I'm practicing. Okay. She brings education and technology into the workforce, and of course that, as she believes, is a key to business success. More than 15 years experience in education, technology, and workforce development, Dana is a vibrant example of how you take power and create power in merging all that together. As the Chief Operating Officer at CodePath, she is guiding that organization as they work to transform computer science education and diversify the nation's competitive entry-level technical roles. We know technology and diversity is the future. Previously, she had stellar positions, developed partnerships, organizations such as Bloomberg, T. Rowe Price, Johns Hopkins, also the City of Baltimore, Twitter, Google, Microsoft, and many, many more. I take it was before Elon at Twitter?
Yes. No.
Okay, we won't go down that path? I'm not going to ask you if you have a Tesla out back or not. Dana serves on 2 nonprofit boards, and along with her husband and her darling 2 sons who I've been hearing all about, what'd you call them, hurricanes? Tornadoes. 2 boys tend to do that. She, of course, calls Baltimore home. So welcome, Dana. Thank you for joining us tonight. And last but not least, hi, Brooke. Brooke Lierman, of course. You must recognize her. She's had a lot of changes going on lately in her life. Of course, you might know her background a bit. And let me just say, looking at the resumes of all of you, it's like we could take most of the evening just to read your accomplishments between all of you. It's just astounding. But civil rights attorney, wife and mom of 2, I put that up at the top because we know that's always the biggest job for anybody, right? two-term Maryland State delegate, and if that isn't enough, her historic stature as breaking the glass ceiling, Maryland's first female comptroller. Can we just say thank you to that? She's always been an active participant in her community, which I think really obviously vibrated during the election, that she doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk. She rolls up her sleeves, she involves herself in the community, she gets involved and to make her community, her world, thus our world, better. She also serves on the board of Downtown Partnership, also the board of the Baltimore Museum of Art, and it's just such an honor and a privilege to have you with us tonight. And we'll get started. Okay, here we go. Now let me move all this out of the way, find a place to sit. And you guys do have water there. I have something a little more interesting, but you know, just my prerogative as the interviewer. So of course the focus this evening, you know, obviously women empowerment, women changing, what's coming up for us in the future and stuff. And the first question, I want to start with you, Brooke, if that's okay. Our brand new governor, Mr. Wes Moore, has been quoted as saying, too often multi-million-dollar contracts come before the board that include waivers to get out of requirements for minority and women-owned business participation. So my question to you would be, what is the state of Maryland doing to support women through these requirements and to make sure that those placements actually happen? Is your microphone on?
It is.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Okay.
Great question. And it's really an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks to the team for organizing this incredible event. This is really phenomenal. I'm going to leave all fired up. So it's a great question. And for those of you who don't know, the Comptroller of the state of Maryland is like the elected CFO of our state. My office sees every dollar in and every dollar out. That every dollar in is because I'm sorry to tell you that I am the tax collector of the state, although also the tax refunder. But that every dollar out is about how we're spending our money. So I sign all the checks when they go out, but it also means that I sit as a member of the 3-person Board of Public Works. And the Board of Public Works of the state of Maryland is a really unique institution in the country, actually. There is no other state that has a BPW. And the BPW is responsible for approving every contract over $200,000 that our state signs off on. So whether that's buying new EV buses or building schools or doing climate resilience infrastructure work or IT contracts, all of that has to be approved by the Board of Public Works. The Board of Public Works has 3 equal members. We have 3 equal votes. Me, the governor, are so excited to have Governor Wes Moore, and our treasurer, Derek Davis. So this is, it's an exciting and important board in the state of Maryland because of its ability to approve or deny contracts. And one of the things that is so important about what the BPW can do is to make sure that we're living up to the promise of our MBE, our Minority Business Enterprise Program. So Maryland actually was the first state in the country to establish an MBE program in 1978. And several years ago, we set our goal at 29% of all contracts. So an average of 29% of cross contracts that qualify to have MBE participation. Now, the problem is that this operates on sort of a promise, not on any sort of actual data and authority. So we aren't really following up oftentimes. The board isn't to keep track of what's going on, and we're not meeting that 29% in any sector. And oftentimes what happens too is we build contracts too big, so MBEs might not have a chance to participate, or we section them off in ways that don't work, or there isn't the sort of requirement from the BPW members to our agency saying, don't bring a contract to us that doesn't meet the requirements. And so I was really proud in our very first meeting with Governor Moore and Treasurer Davis and I, we each publicly made a commitment where we said, to the procurement officers of our agencies, like, don't bring contracts that that ask for waivers. Like, we're done. And what we are doing now in the Comptroller's office is to go around and meet with every procurement officer from every state agency to talk with them about what they're doing to make sure they meet those MBE goals. And then we also need to reach out to more MBEs, right? And say, hey, we need you to participate. What is it that is keeping you from participating in the program? Is it that the requirements for capital are too high? Is it that you need, you need to be paid more quickly, or you need a loan, a revolving loan to help you get through the time when you're not being paid? What is it that would help you participate? So that's work that we're also really excited to be doing and embark on, because this is a way, look, we want people to participate as MBEs, but then we also want them to graduate and get out of the MBE program because they're so big, right? Because you have to be a smaller company to be an MBE. And so we want to be creating MBEs, be working with them, be building wealth, and then make sure they keep building on in the future.
So it's a step in the right direction. Obviously nothing's going to happen overnight.
Right.
But the difference is
so important for us
that
to
you're
say
laying down the law and
the buck
saying,
stops here.
Buck stops
here.
And
that don't bring those contracts to us. Don't even start embarking on that, because we're gonna have to send it back to you. So
waste their time and waste your time.
Right.
And it doesn't produce stuff. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
See, that's an exciting change in the right direction.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Dana, let's talk a little bit about the difference between getting terms here. So so everybody's on the same page, right? We have gender equity, gender equality, and women's empowerment. How are those different, and how do they work together? Is it work? Hello?
I think
we got you. Yeah, good.
Sure. It's intimidating to follow Brooke Lierman. I'm a little nervous. So great question. I think of equality as everyone gets the same thing, which I think is different than equity, which I think is looking at things through more of a justice lens and recognizing some of the underlying systemic inequalities that can impact people's lived experiences, cut across lines of difference, and might actually argue for people receiving different things based on where they are, meeting them where they are, what they need. So we might all have equal chance to apply for the same job, but we know that women, research shows, apply for jobs when they meet 100% of the criteria listed in the job description. Men will apply if they meet 60% of the criteria listed. So sure, we all have an equal chance, but what's happening in our society that's causing women to apply for jobs in sort of different ways. I think that women's empowerment, I think, is important, but it also, I think, can leave or sort of implies the individual perspective in confidence, in raising your hand, in leaning in, which is great. And again, we know that there are sometimes negative repercussions for women when, for instance, some research shows that women who negotiate for a salary are then punished later when they're in the workforce. So it's great to have confidence, speak up, raise your hand, negotiate for the salary, all of the empowering advice that I'm sure women hear. I think I've heard a phrase that women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. So I think there's a difference between coaching, helping, cheering on, which I would put maybe in an empowerment bucket, all great things. I think all things that probably women in this room are doing for each other, and ways that we can empower each other where you're actually putting skin in the game, where you're saying, I want to recommend this person for a promotion. I want to give them a stretch project. My sister-in-law suggested me to be on this panel. So I think that's like a different level of empowerment, right? Going out on a limb for another woman, and that's something that men and women can and should be doing for each other.
Going back to something you said early on in your comments about how men will only apply with 60% of the requirements and women 100. Do you think that's because women don't think they'll get it unless they meet 100% of the criteria, or do you think that's the reality that they probably won't be considered if they don't meet 100? So is it inward confidence, or is it the reality of the workforce looking at the candidates?
So 10 years ago, I went to work for Girls Who Code when they had done a pilot program with 20 girls, and then is now like a global phenomenon in Super Bowl commercials, have reached hundreds of thousands of girls. But the founder of Girls Who Code has her in her TED Talk, she says, we train girls to be perfect and boys to be brave. So I think there can be, that's a lot of generalizations about gender, right? Which we know there's all shapes and sizes. And I think that society can value perfectionism, rule following, sitting quietly and listening, getting straight A's. I was a gymnast for 20 years, so going for that perfect 10, right? Not coloring outside the lines. And so I think that, whereas boys, it's like, great, make a mess, try, you fell, get up, do it again, and I think that sometimes that can translate when we get to the workplace of, if I don't think I will be successful at this, or if this looks scary, do I stretch and try for it? Or do I look at, a list where I do think I could meet every single bullet point on that job description?
Tiffanni, what do you think if we are, is your microphone on? Do you have yours? Wait. Oh, we'll share. There we go. Okay, I just wait, the woman has nothing in her hand. Okay, we have to make it. What is the one thing that we as individuals and as a culture can do to make a positive impact on gender equality within an organization or within a business? You're an employee, you're an owner, you and yourself, you have your own business, you have people you work with, vendors, collaborators, partnerships, but how do you change that in terms of equity, equality, and empowerment in your business?
That's a big question. Okay.
I know, I gave you a lot,
So within my business, because I try to work with other small businesses so often, I try to kind of diversify who I'm asking, right? So if I need to collaborate with another architect, if I need to find a furniture vendor or a tile shop even, right? Like I will go to different people for different jobs, because to me, it's important that I support many businesses and not always work with the same people all the time. And then, when it comes to finding people who are actually working with me, I think I've been really intentional about selecting. So there's one person who works with me right now. We've known each other for a very long time. I trust her entirely, right? But I think that thinking about who I'd like to work with next and who I'd like to bring onto our team, like I'm actively thinking about okay, what is this person's background? How can I make my business more diverse if I want that person to work on commercial projects versus residential projects? Like, how can I offer my clients more of a diverse group of people to collaborate on their work, right? Like, I would love the most input. I would love all of our input to be very diverse input so that we get a better product.
Well, there's a lot of women within the arts, obviously, within design as well, but how do you encourage them to step out of what is considered interiors? Like you work with architects, you have that whole construction angle on your stuff.
Yeah.
That isn't the traditional idea of design for a lot of young women who are starting out in the business. How do you expand their view of art as a business and in different ways than maybe what they've expected?
So I get reached out to a lot via Instagram mostly to talk to younger generations of designers. And I think last week maybe I had a conversation with a woman who was working with BIPOC students at Reidy, and she wanted to hear about how I got into my business and how I've kind of taken the path I've taken, which hasn't been a traditional path within my field. And so I find it really rewarding and very important to speak to students, because there is a choice, right? I could have said oh, I'm an interior designer only and I don't want to study construction and architecture, and I could have just done decoration, and that could have been it, right? But for me, it was important to be able to do like a fuller breadth of a project. So I like to talk to students about that.
Well, that's where the STEAM and STEM programs really come in. Is
Yeah.
that what you're seeing more in your work, Dana, as well?
I think we did some message testing when I was at Girls Who Code, because we were actually struggling to recruit girls to even enroll in a free program to study computer science, to be inside of the world's largest tech companies. We thought they'll be banging down our door. It turns out that by high school, oftentimes girls have opted into, or I self-identify as, I'm a math person or I'm not. I'm a STEM person or I'm not. I'm an arts person or I'm not. And so we tested a variety of messages to see what actually resonated with girls, and we found that a lot of the messaging around STEM and computer science that you thought might attract people to the field, like there's great jobs, you can make a lot of money, you can be powerful, you can be a CEO someday. The message we found that resonated most was technology is a tool to change the world, and that you can combine it with whatever skill set you're passionate about. So you can use this as a toolkit in medicine, in fashion, in interior design. And so I think that it's important to not just apply the same, what you think someone might want, and to rather position it as more expansive, and that can be more welcoming and inclusive for folks that have not necessarily always seen themselves in those career paths.
Okay, let's talk about leadership a little bit, because that's really, I think, where a lot of the strength of, obviously you are all leaders in your industry. That puts a lot of pressure on you to bring a lot of people along with you. You have found your own path. When you were at University of Texas, did you think, oh gee, I want to be the Comptroller of Maryland? Like how I'll just put that on my to-do list for my box, what is your leadership style? What is it that you found in your journey that helped you go through attorney and all the other steps you've had to get where you are today?
Sure, great question. No, I didn't know what the Comptroller of Maryland was when I was in law school. I think I've always tried to live very intentionally where I am and to make a difference in the space that I am in that moment. So I grew up in Montgomery County grew up in DC and Montgomery County. Went away for college, law school, worked in nonprofits, did AmeriCorps, worked on campaigns, and eventually found my way back to Baltimore through a federal clerkship. And when I was a federal law clerk, my husband and I settled in Fells Point. I knew 3 other people in the city of Baltimore who were all also federal law clerks, who also didn't know anybody else. But I found out that it turns out that there's community associations in every neighborhood, as we all know, and joined my local community association and just started showing up, started getting involved. Also, I got really frustrated because public transit was so bad, and the bus, I wanted to take the number 10 bus down Eastern Avenue to get to downtown to the courthouse, and it would never show up. And I was like, how is this a major American city without a transit system? What is happening here? And then I heard about this thing called the Red Line, and I was like, oh, that sounds perfect. We live in Fells Point. There'll be a stop downtown. I want to learn more about that. So through the Fells Point Residents Association, just where I was at the time, I joined this Red Line coalition, and then got tapped to be on the citywide Red Line Coalition or Red Line Citizens Advisory Committee. So got super involved just by sort of starting with where I was. I wasn't thinking about running for office. I was trying to, make sure that there was transit coming. I was also doing a lot of pro bono work. As I then had transitioned to a law firm, Brown, Goldstein, and Levy, that does civil rights, disability rights. I don't know if any of you remember the ESPN zone. My first case was representing all the workers who got laid off in violation of the Federal WARN Act. Got a bunch of money for them from Disney. And so I was just trying to, learn Baltimore, learn to be a lawyer. And then I was doing pro bono work for the Community Law Center, sort of shutting down bad bars and corner liquor stores that were really damaging their neighborhoods. Started realizing that this was the that the liquor board in Baltimore City was appointed by the governor. And I was like, there's no accountability there. You know, the governor's not paying attention to who the Baltimore City liquor board members are. Why is this happening? And then I realized transit is really funded at the state level, and the Red Line was a project. The MTA was a state agency, not a city agency. So I started really just understanding the impact that the state and state government was having on me, in my daily life, but also on my new community in this city. And started getting frustrated about it, and eventually just decided to throw my hat in for state delegate, because I felt like there needed to be people standing up for communities and for transit and doing work. I was about to send my child to Baltimore City Public Schools, and at that time, I don't think there were any legislators who had kids in public schools, and so it felt like there were voices that weren't being heard.
So you're telling us you're an accidental leader?
I'm an accidental leader. But I'm an accidental elected leader. I think that, and then I just realized that, you do the work in the space, right? When I ran for delegate, I was not thinking, I am gonna do all of this so I can run for comptroller, right? I just think it's a terrible way to live. It's so hard to live like that, to always be planning for what's next. So I feel really strongly, and I always have, my friends now will say to me, we knew you were gonna be in elected office. And I'm like, I didn't. I've always been interested in elected office, but I love to organize and work with people. And, just making a difference and being a positive force in the space where you are, I think ends up then opening opportunities. And so, I won my delegate race, top vote getter, and then served for 2 terms. And I will tell you, I learned a lot about the Board of Public Works and just how important it was and about what the Comptroller does. And Peter Francho called me to wish me happy birthday in 2020. In February, right before the pandemic, and I said, you're not running for re-election, why not? And he said to me, Brooke, it's time for me to pass the baton on to someone younger. And I said, but you like the job? He said, it's the greatest job in the world. And I said, well, good luck with whatever's next. And, then he was running for governor. And that was the first moment I started thinking maybe that's something I could do. But I will tell you, I could not have done it but for the women friends in my life. The first person I talked to about it was a woman named Martha McKenna, who lives in Roland Park and is a nationally recognized TV commercial maker. She did Kamala's ads, she did my ads, she did Deb Halan. So other women, my friend Meredith, all these women in my life who were like, yeah, you can do that, and who really got me to where I am. There's a reason that, my chief of staff is a woman, our state public engagement director, Eva Lewis, is in the back. We've got, we are a women-led office, because we are collaborative and we support one another. And I've worked in spaces where women did not support other women, and it was terrible. But I just see the power of women supporting other women and how much more we get done. So I think accidental elected leader, but only through the goodness of the women who have surrounded me and supported me along the way.
Well, obviously, you could not do this unless you were committed to a vision and something within yourself was telling you to do that. Dana, what kind of leader do you see yourself as? Were you accidental? Did you have a chart and a path of kind of this is what I have in mind? How did you get here?
I think I was reminded of the meme that says, behind every accomplished woman, there's a group text thread hyping her up in the middle of the night, right? When you're crying because something has gone wrong or you don't know what to wear for the thing the next day. So I would +1 to the women around you being kind of number 1 cheerleaders, hype squads, convincing you that you can do the thing that you're not sure of. When I was at some transition in a job, the best advice a girlfriend on a text thread gave me, we were all 3 negotiating for new jobs, and she said, go in, state your number, and shut the blank up. She was like, women will say, well, I'd like this. Oh, but if you don't have that much money, it's fine. Or I'll do this other thing that you don't want me to do. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't let them talk you out of it. State what you're looking for. But to your original question, I would put myself in the Brene Brown School of Leadership, which is awkward, brave, and kind. So I think that I think vulnerability and empathy are huge in terms of leadership, and which is what builds like the trust and the foundational relationships with humans that I think enables the work to get done. So I think it's one thing I've struggled with in the Zoom world and in a fully remote job. I think the work will happen over Zoom. The work will be fine. It's like the underlying human stuff that I think sometimes we still need the face-to-face, and I think is really critical for building that trust with the other humans that then enables you to have the great celebrations, the great wins, the progress on the big projects, as well as to have the hard conversations. So I think it's, I'm always trying to be like maximum kind of care and love and respect and maximum accountability. And I think that's where we all do our best work, and where like the leaders that I have wanted to follow to the ends of the earth, I think are the ones who can set that big vision, high expectations, audacious goals, along with belief that you can do it, and then we're in this together. So I think that's the type of leaders that I have always wanted to follow, and I think what I hope to do in roles with my team.
Tiffanni, what do you think impacts a woman's ability to lead?
Circumstances.
Expand on that.
Well, so I think that for a lot of women who are married or have a child, or maybe don't come from an affluent family, or just the environment that we've grown up in, right? So I don't consider myself a leader. I am definitely like someone who's very focused on my business and not like...
Okay, step back. I can't let you go with that statement. Why do you not, okay, psychologist here. Why do you not see yourself as a leader?
I think I see leaders as people who have people who they're actively influencing every day, right? And who are looking to them for guidance, right? I'm a leader to my clients. I'm a leader to the people I work with on a project, but I don't have, a large group of people who are looking to me for answers frequently. Right,
There you go. You just need one, yeah.
And I love that. And I've led people in larger projects, right? But I think that I guess historically, what I think of as a leader is someone has a lot of visibility. And I've never been a person who's really enjoyed that. So it's hard for me to think of myself in that realm whatsoever. But it's nice. I love doing it. I love being in charge of, how something is going to go.
And the accomplishment it feels at the end of that.
Yes.
Particularly when you're designing something, it's start to finish. Hey, we all watch HGTV. We know how that big reveal goes. It's it came out the way you wanted to or not, right?
Exactly. I'm very task focused for sure. I'm very detail oriented. I do a lot of listening to, everyone's input before deciding how a project should go.
Well, and having a voice and being listened to and heard is really huge in leadership, because you have to validate the people around you, correct?
Exactly. And in my line of work, people are hiring me for that end goal, right? For that reveal, essentially. And so what's really rewarding for me is leading my clients through that process, and leading everyone who's working on a project to get to that beautiful thing at the end, right? To clarify with my circumstances answer, I think that there are just, much to Dana's point earlier, there are a lot of people who just they don't think that they can impact anyone because of whatever circumstances they're in. And I think women specifically do a lot of weighing of, could I do this even if I'm passionate about it? Mm-hmm. Who's going to support me through that? How am I going to get that done? How am I going to open a business or have childcare at the same time that I have a job, or You know, can we afford to do this, right? Like, that's a big question. So I think that circumstances for everyone, it's everything, right? It's
Right.
like, it's to go back to your other question, like, it's how we decide whether we should apply for a job, right? Like, if we don't think we can manage to do that job and do everything else we already have going on, then like that leads to people not applying.
Well, do you think that so my oldest daughter's 30, and her world is completely different professionally than it was when I started, too long ago to mention. But the point being, what advice, I'll give this to you, Brooke, what advice do we give this next generation of women coming up to create their paths, to become leaders in a world that, you know, you're not in the office 5 days a week to network. You're Zooming, you're remoting, you're, you know, 4-day work weeks now. Yay, that's great, but still it affects work, right? So what do we tell them?
It's a good question. My daughter's only 5, so I'm still working on it.
You got time.
Yeah. No, I think we tell them to be brave. I mean, you know, I think we encourage them to make mistakes. There are these great kids books out there. One of them is called Rosie Revere, Engineer. Another's Ada Twist, Scientist. And they're about these, I'll tell you, Rosie Revere is about this little girl who dreams of being a great engineer, but she makes these projects that are terrible and she gets laughed at, and so then she doesn't want to try anymore. And then her great aunt Rosie, like Rosie the Riveter, comes in and says, no, Rosie, like the greatest thing is that you tried, and you know, this is your great flop. The only failure comes if you quit. And so you have to learn from every mistake. And I feel like that was not something that I feel like I was taught as a child, but now really try to embrace and try to share with the folks around me. It's really important to sort of know what you don't know, be okay with the fact that you don't know everything, and you know, and sort of love that about yourself, and be always seeking answers from the people around you and learning from the people around you, and sort of have the self-confidence to not know everything and to get things wrong and to just keep going. So to me, that's about being brave and embracing your imperfections and loving surrounding yourself with people who are awesome and smart and fun and engaged and, you know, want to be with you on the journey. So yeah, I mean, I think we teach people to be brave and be themselves and love themselves, and to learn from one another and support one another along the way. And you know, that's what I certainly try to do as a leader, and certainly hope that, you know, my daughter and younger generations of women will support one another and give them the space to learn and be brave and make mistakes and keep going together.
Dana, you mentioned something a bit ago about what was the comment about how women they mentor each other, but they don't sponsor each other.
Oh, we're
like
over-mentored and under-sponsored.
Okay, so the Old Boys Club, as it was always called, is that a sponsoring versus what women do, where we cheer everybody on and say, you know, that's a great dress you have on? I mean, what is the difference, and how do women get from mentoring to sponsoring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's that notion of like skin in the game, and you're sort of sticking your neck out on behalf of another woman. And that might be for a promotion, for a project, for a special assignment. And I think another thing that I experience in my life, and I see women, I think there's a tremendous amount of caregiving outside of the workplace that falls disproportionately on women. The other thing that makes me crazy is seeing women, and I put myself in this bucket sometimes, taking on or getting assigned what I call office housework. So the most recent example, I'm in a network called Chief, which is around getting more women into the C-suite. It's trying to like replicate the Good Old Boys network, but for women. So it's a national network for women in leadership. And in a core group, which is a group that you get placed in with 6 or 7 other women, multiple of us have had the experience of being asked to cue up the music for an all-hands meeting. Like, it's not enough to be like a C-suite executive or leading a large team or, raising $20 million. I'm also supposed to be the personal DJ of the company. Like, what?
Wow.
So, and that's just one example, but it's like, some folks are returning to offices, and another woman in my group was like, oh, right, no one has cleaned the coffee maker in 3 years, so now I'm cleaning the coffee maker. Or, we have, so I think there's things like that we have to move. Or I was once told I was great at taking notes in a meeting.
Oh my, okay.
Which again, I think the man thought he was giving me a compliment. I don't
Sure.
think he thought, but right, so when you're-
You have great penmanship. Can you keep doing this?
Right.
Yeah.
So I share these examples to say that is not what we want to be using our extra brilliant brain space and time to be doing, right? We need to be giving women the type of work and projects and assignments and stretch opportunities that will enable them to take the next step in their career, or enable them to make a mistake and learn from it and recover and go on to take the next step in their career, right? So I think it's about finding substantive ways to position women for growth and success, and getting out of the weeds of the micro tasks and the office moms when we're also often the real life moms.
Yeah. But sometimes we have to stop ourselves from doing
Totally.
that. It's
Yes.
not because we're too quick, as you were saying, to volunteer and
Yes.
go, I really like a good cup of coffee, so I'll just give up, I'll clean it, right?
Right.
So
One of my best bosses, she was like, my new power move is I won't even get out a notebook at a meeting. She was like, I'll just sit at the table. I'm not taking notes. I was like, cool.
That's a
power
great
move.
move.
Boss move.
Take a note on that. Okay.
Take a note, don't take
Don't
notes.
take notes. No notes on that. How about some questions? Did you guys have some questions for him? Anybody? Oh, I see right over here. What is your name?
Adiola.
Okay, and what is your question?
I guess my question would be for anyone can pick it up, but my question is specifically in transitioning from equality to equity. And oftentimes what I've seen in my field of work is that because we haven't really achieved equality yet, the equity conversation kind of goes over people's heads. So how do we truly get women and diverse women to understand that equality is really just the first step, that equity's true achievement is the true peak we're trying to get to, but we getting to that step of equality isn't enough, because I feel like sometimes people will get to equality and then stop there, and that's not truly the equity conversation.
Who wants to pick that up? Brooke, we'll let you go with that one.
That's a really important question. And I think, honestly, I think a lot of that's on us and people in this space and people who are cognizant of it, to make sure that we're doing the work in our own spaces, right? So whether that is being intentional about who you hire, being intentional about the outreach that you do. We have the Comptroller's office, like every state agency has a website where we list our job postings, who's gonna see that. The one thing that it does is if you don't meet all the qualifications that they list out, they don't even push you through to the next stage. So we've gone to sort of lowering what it says online so that more people can apply. And actually we took away a lot of qualifications just so we would have a more diverse workforce. So only 6% of jobs in the Comptroller's office right now require a college degree, for instance, because we wanted to really open up the jobs and job access to people. But then it's also not just enough to post it on a Comptroller's website, because who on earth is looking at that? And it's frankly not enough to post it on LinkedIn, right? You have to be intentional about sending those specific applications out to different people to say, hey, do you know people who might be interested in this, right? So it's really doing the extra work to make sure that you're not just, hey, it's equal, I'm letting anybody apply, here's the website. It's no, you're going beyond that. And that's just one very small and specific example of how to make sure that you're reaching out and doing more. But from a state job perspective, I think that's really important to make sure that people are getting extra, that we're going above and beyond, that we're doing the work that we need to do to make sure that people are represented and who haven't traditionally been. And I think it's also about surrounding ourselves with leaders who don't look like us, right? And making sure that we have those voices at the table represented as well. to make sure that we're reaching out and doing the work that needs to be done, because frankly, it makes for a stronger product, right? It makes for a stronger team when people have a seat at the table.
That's a great answer. Okay, what other questions do we have? Don't be shy. Wait, where? Oh, here we are. Thank you. What is your name?
My name is Danny Donovan, and my question is, we own a plumbing company. I'm one of the plumbers in the field. What would you say to a woman looking to get into a man's role?
Tiffany. We've got a plumber here for you for your next job.
I know. I was just excited to hear about the plumbing. I wasn't ready for the question. I think that, I'm just a person who's like, I think very open to anyone applying for things, and like, I am construction aligned, right? Like, all of my projects are renovations. So when I hear that there's a woman-led company, I'm much more likely to be like, hey, let me check out this company first, right? But I think that if you have the skills, like, there's no reason to not apply, right? Like, if you know what you're doing and you have, especially if you have examples of your work, I think it's much harder when you don't. But I feel like everyone should apply for everything, because.
Do you think it's a matter more of networking or finding something unique? Because the uniqueness is not that you're plumbers, the uniqueness that you're women plumbers, and just to market yourself in that way?
I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I'd be much more likely to hire a woman plumber if I knew you than a male plumber. I think it's important that we like lean, I don't mean it in the Sheryl Sandberg kind of way, but to like lean into one another, So I'm the first woman comptroller, and I can't tell you how many people asked me on the campaign trail, like, oh, are you an accountant? Are you a CPA? And how many times I had to say no, and neither is Peter Franchot. Like, no, and neither of my competitors are either, right? And no, neither was Louis Goldstein, and neither were any of our comptrollers ever. I am not going to actually do your taxes, right? That is not the job of the comptroller. But you actually can do our plumbing. So I think it's really important to be like loud and proud about it, right? And I'm a woman, I'm a plumber, and this is what I do, and judge, but like, you're skilled, right? And as women, I feel like we all also, this is the 100% thing, feel like we always have to show how qualified we are to do things. I think it's, and that's just, we always are, maybe we won't always do it, but we do it a lot of the time. And so I was always wearing on my sleeve that I sat on the appropriations committee, and I was on the pension committee, and I know money, even though I'm not a CPA. But I think it's just great to, be pushed out there and be, I bet all of these people will hire you to do their work now, right? And spread the word. And I think that's an important place. That's why I hired, most of my consultants were all women. I trusted them. They knew me. They got me. And that was important for my brand. So I'm sure, people can help spread your brand too.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. How important is marketing yourself in the workplace? I mean, do you showcase the fact that you're an accomplished woman? Do you just say, I'm accomplished, like you were saying? I mean, if it is something unique about you, and if it's something that you're beating the odds at in your profession, why not advertise it? Dana?
So there was an interesting example from, so I work for a nonprofit that was founded by 3 brilliant engineers, all 3 men. So there's 3 co-founders, and then I joined the organization a year and a half ago, but I was the first person to be in the C-suite with the co-founders. And so our marketing team was updating our PowerPoint decks, our slide decks, intro to CodePath. And they were like, can we put you on the slide with the co-founders? And I was like, no, well, I'm not a co-founder. Don't put, that's the people who started the company. I'm in a different role. And then, a couple weeks passed, and one of my team members came to me, and she was like, I asked the marketing team to put you on that slide because we're a nonprofit, so we're like 80 or 90% female. She was like, it's really important for the team to see you on that slide. And so I realized like my own internal,
the optics.
Right. And so it was like, okay, I need to own this and like, yes, put me on the slide and, get more comfortable. I don't need to just be in a behind the scenes role, but I'm one of to your role. Maybe I don't always see myself as the leader, like out front on the thing. So it's not something that I like lead with every day, but I've realized now that it's important, I think, for younger women too to see, you can't be what you can't see. So I think to see examples of women in leadership roles, particularly breaking barriers in firsts of things or in like non-traditional industries.
Yeah, own it and be proud, right? What other questions? Anybody? Wait, where? Over here, up! Okay. Making me work out here, come on. Okay, your name?
Jen Sproul. So I don't have a question, actually. I actually have a comment to you. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the National Association of Women in Construction. I'm a Baltimore chapter director. We're a support system for women in the industry. And I think all of you have said that. Surround yourself with women who understand what you're doing. We can help you build your business. We can help make connections. I've been in the industry 23 years now, and I wouldn't be where I am today without NAWIC and without the support I've had from other women in this industry. So that's, I would say, is echoing everything you all have said, is join NAWIC. It's also the 25th annual WIC Week, Women in Construction Week, right now.
So you're going to talk with her. Look what we did. We're making work tonight. Oh, we have a question over here. Okay. Go ahead.
I also work for Jennifer. We're not for Jennifer, but with Jennifer. I have a podcast in the construction industry, so does Jennifer, and I do marketing for MEP firms. So if you guys are interested, I'd love to talk to you.
And we all get a cut of what you're making tonight then, right? What other questions do we have? Well, I got a few more questions because I'm just that kind of person. Okay, so my thought is for mentors. We've all had mentors, that person that changed our lives. I'm assuming you each have had one. Can you share that and kind of how they impacted your life and in what way? Tiffany, do you want to start? Who was the person that opened your eyes to what you could do?
I would definitely say it's been professors of mine, because I think while I haven't had a traditional career path, I did have a very traditional educational path. And so having professors who allowed me to kind of go outside the box and not necessarily do a typical project, or if they've let me kind of investigate something that we aren't studying, those have been my mentors. So the people that I'm thinking of, there's probably 4 of them in particular, that I can remember going to them and just being like, I don't really think that what we're doing is what I want to do. And so how can I learn more about what I actually want to be doing? And those people were my mentors. They were the ones who said, yes, do this. Like, do an independent study. Do a project that has some alternative concept to it that like isn't what we're studying, so that you can figure out if this is what you want to do. And I think they had the biggest impact on my career and where I am now versus kind of the traditional career path of like go to design school, work for a firm, work for another firm, and move up within that, and then maybe go off on your own. I didn't do that, and that's because like I was able to kind of explore and figure out what I actually love to do, and then also look at what jobs were available and who was hiring for things, and realize, oh, if I want to do the things that I'm passionate about, I maybe have to do this by myself.
Dana?
This is a hard one. I feel like there's not one mentor. I don't know. I feel like a lot gets wrapped up in that word, and there's this pressure to find like the one fairy godmother who's teaching and coaching you all things. And I feel like I've had a number of mentors that have filled and served in different ways. One in particular was the woman who hired me to Girls Who Code, because I think for me, she just set the standard for, again, she's still one of my models of leadership, like big, audacious vision, impeccably high standards, high expectations, but like unfailing belief in me and the team. And she would be both giving us impossible tasks to accomplish when we were a 4 or 5 person nonprofit, and would always pepper the conversation with, I'm sure you know this already. There's no one better equipped to do this than you. You probably did this last week. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I did not. I have to Google things now. But she thinks I can do this, and I will. And so I will like run through a wall because she believes in me. I believe in this thing we're trying to build together. And I know that like if I screw it up, she's gonna have my back. She's also one of the best like fundraisers that I've ever worked with. And when we were, again, tiny nonprofit days, we had a meeting with Google, and I remember walking in and I'm thinking, I hope they give us, $50,000. And she said, they should be embarrassed to give us less than $2 million. And, we ended up with 500,000. So they didn't give us $2 million, but we got 10 times the amount of money that I thought we were going to get going into that meeting. So I think that like the audaciousness and sort of the like, we're the best people to do this. This is why we're here. Why not us and this moment and this movement? I think is like an ethos that has sort of stuck with me. And she's now on the board of CodePath, so we get to still work together
Fantastic.
today.
Brooke?
Yes, I'd say similarly, I think there have been people along the way at different phases of my life who've helped and who sort of opened my eyes to possibilities. I had a boss very early on, and an older gentleman who worked in the Clinton White House, who after I left, I worked at the Center for American Progress, a think tank, before I went to law school. And before I left, I was his like special assistant. And before I left, he said, I think someday you should think about running for office. And it was the first time anybody had ever said that to me. And I sort of was like, okay, that's nice that he thinks that. Thank you so much. But it came back years later, and he was one of the first people that I called when I, started thinking about doing it. And but then there are people, and certainly in my elected life, like Maggie McIntosh, who's a former state delegate who represented, I think, this area. And she was chair of the Appropriations Committee when I was on the Appropriations Committee. And just sort of like watching her do her thing as chair was really amazing, because she ran the show. But she didn't need to be loud about it. She didn't need to be overly assertive. She just had this very quiet power about her that I found really amazing. And her ability to just be a really excellent listener and bring everybody to the table to talk with them was really impressive to me. And nobody didn't like her. Like, everybody liked Maggie and wanted to talk with her and share their ideas with her, and felt heard by her, even when she didn't actually put the money in the budget that you wanted her to. And so I look at her as somebody who's been really instrumental in my life, both in her support of me and her belief in me and my ability to do things, but also is just sort of watching her to learn from her and people like her.
Well, she's an impressive woman. Anybody? What other questions? One more for the road. Wait, do I hear one? Yes. Go ahead. Hold on. I'm coming. You're the last one. Don't you feel special?
Hi, Colleen Vasile. I think, when will we not have to have all this conversation? I think when I think about it, starting my career like 20 plus years ago, we've come a long way. And the reason I have my own company is because I hit a ceiling where I was. And I said, I need to create my own opportunity. So again, we've come a long way, but when will we not have to have this conversation anymore? Just your thoughts on that.
Anybody, just jump in.
I don't know. I don't think we'll ever not have to have this conversation. I mean, I think it'll always be about women supporting women, and that we'll always need to have each other's back, and that there will always be a need and a space for that. I think, look, we don't even have a single member of our congressional delegation as a woman right now in Maryland, but But even when we do, even if we have more than 50%, I think there's always still going to be a need for us to be working together and banding together and making sure that we're supporting one another. I mean, Roe v. Wade was the law of the land for most of our lives, and it did certainly never occurred to me until a year or so ago that it was actually going to happen and that it was going to go away, right? So even when we have rights, like, there is always going to be the risk that they are taken away. And so I think that there's always going to be a need for all of us to work together to keep pushing ourselves forward and to, frankly, keep pushing the world forward. Because when we do well, like, communities do well, right? When women do well, communities and societies thrive. And when we don't, then things fall apart. So I think there's always going to need to be this.
You know what? Sadly, true, but such a wonderful answer. Thank you. Well, at this point, I just want to turn it back to Rachel and Hazel. And
Well, Rachel. Okay, so that concludes the discussion panel portion, but please stay, eat, there's plenty of food. And we wanted just to thank again Marianne, Brooke, Dana, Tiffany. Thank you all so much.